Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, January 28th. Derek Van Riper and Eno Saris here, joined today by senior baseball writer Keith Law, fresh off the publication of his latest Top 100 Prospects list. If you're a subscriber to The Athletic, you can check that out. And in the midst of turning out top 20s for every single team in the big leagues, those will be rolling out next week, first week of February. So we got that to look forward to as well. Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Always good to chop it up with you. We've got a fresh list here to start breaking down. And right at the top, we got Konnor Griffin, really interesting player with the Pirates, who I think the Pirates maybe are changing their mindset a little bit, in part because of Paul Skeens and maybe the realization that they need to try and make the playoffs while Paul Skeens is still a Pirate. And one of the things they may do is promote Konnor Griffin very quickly, right? I mean, maybe opening day. There's been a report that's a possibility. I know you've got a lofty long-term ceiling on Griffin, but what do you think the short-term outlook would be if they go that route and actually give him a lot of big league playing time in 2026?
So, my general answer is we have seen even elite position player prospects struggle with the jump to the big leagues. Even guys who look like they were completely ready, guys who'd performed all the way up through AAA, get to the big leagues and struggle on their first exposure. A lot of really good, really highly rated prospects, not just my highly rated, everybody. Universe all says these guys are really good. Most of them struggle right out of the chute. Is Konnor Griffin that much of an outlier? He is probably the best number one prospect we have had maybe since Mike Trout. Certainly the best combination of presentability and ceiling. Maybe he's an exception to that. It's entirely possible. I don't love the idea. And I heard this morning from a good source that they are strongly considering it, or will at least give him an opportunity to win the job out of spring training, which I don't love either, because obviously he can look great in March and then look terrible in April. The first are pretend games. Hitting well in pretend games is not the same as hitting well in real games. Also, I question just why, right? What is gained by not just giving him, he's hit all the way up through AA. It was a month or so. He's hit all the way up through AA. What is gained by having him come right to the majors versus what would be lost by sending him to AAA for a month? Let him go to Indianapolis, and if he just tears the cover off the ball for a couple of weeks, then call him up. You've lost nothing. You've lost maybe a win's worth of value, but also potentially saved yourself the question of, if you promote him to the majors and he struggles badly enough, which doesn't change his long-term outlook at all, but struggles badly enough that you have to think about sending him down at some point. Do you really want to take that risk? I am much more, and I don't think I'm a particularly conservative guy when it comes to anything baseball. But in this case, it's sort of what is the reward to balance out the risk? And I'm not sure that I see that. I'm not even talking service time nonsense. That is a whole separate conversation, and they don't really want to ever encourage teams to hold players back strictly for that reason. I think there's a baseball argument.
He could still come up and win the Rookie of the Year in 5 months.
Absolutely.
And so if you're talking about that sort of that bit of the CBA, which
good point.
Is
very
interesting.
Good point.
But AAA is totally different. In AAA, they play with the strike zone that we're about to, we basically play with in the pros, because they've been doing the challenge system. And we looked at last year when they changed the way that umpires are umpiring, or the way that we grade umpires. That basically the strike zone last year in baseball, in Major League Baseball, was the AAA strike zone from the year before. So basically the challenge strike zone in AAA. So you give them a chance to see this new strike zone that's going to be in the big leagues, but see it with slightly worse pitchers, right? So you can, so you're not like, oh my God, it's a new strike zone, plus all the pitchers are great. All of these things at once. Yeah.
Yep. And that's my, go to AAA and face a lot of guys with big league stuff who maybe don't have big league command, but that's a good test, actually. And he's not going to have a problem hitting that. He's basically hit everything. It's a question of, is it what happens when you're facing guys multiple times who have big league stuff and who understand the art of pitching, how to get you out, how to sequence pitches more, who might have a better breaking ball, or be the ability to land a breaking ball that you haven't seen so much. I see a lot of, but most of what I see during the year is AA and below. It's a lot of bad baseball out there. as it turns out. There's a lot of great players, a lot of really bad baseballs, a lot of guys who throw super hard and do not know where it's going because, that didn't work. Let me throw it harder.
The number one thing that I admire about you and other prospect hounds is that when I see the bad baseball, I say, bad baseball. Like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, but look at the shorts. Look at the
yeah, right. You're like, it's like I got a big sieve, right? And just a little bit comes out, right? And all the bad baseball gets left in the sieve.
I saw some game in San Jose and I was like, I don't think there's a big leaguer here. And I might have been right, but like, who knows? One question I had about Konnor Griffin before we move on just is, he's the 9th pick in the draft. What questions were answered, in the minors that led him to drop to 9th or whatever?
Yeah, the big question, I said something, I don't even remember where at this point, but I said this the other day where it's like, we may be setting up another Mike Trout narrative. How did Mike Trout end up the 26th, whatever he was, pick in that draft? And for folks who don't remember, Mike Trout was a Southern New Jersey kid, terrible track record of high school players from Southern New Jersey. He was it was a miserable spring. I lived in the Northeast at that time as well. It rained constantly. I got Trout on one of the few sunny days, but the ground was a disaster. So I didn't see him run that well. And then, a year later, he's in Pro Ball and people are like, he's an 80 runner. I'm like, an 80 runner? What are you talking about? I just saw this guy. He was like, okay, above average, maybe, but 80 runner. Of course, obviously he was an 80 runner. And they also didn't have they just didn't play that many games that year. And there were a couple other factors going into it, but it all kind of made sense at the time. And then you see the player a year later against better competition. You're like, oops, right? This is mantle. And with Griffin, history of high school players from the state of Mississippi in particular is awful. Austin Riley, I think, just became the best player ever drafted, position player ever drafted out of Mississippi high school, like to sign, not to go to college, but to actually sign out of Mississippi high school. It is an awful track record. It is some of the worst baseball anywhere in the South. Generally in the South, we think of high school baseball as being pretty good. In Mississippi, it's actually really bad. And he went to a fairly small prep school too. It's not like he was facing the best of the best necessarily either. And at showcases, when he was facing better pitching, he showed all the tools, but the hitting wasn't great. It was a real question of could he hit real quality pitching like you're going to see basically every night in pro ball, at least in terms of quality of stuff or quality, even just pure velocity. And I've mentioned a few times, he does have that arm bar. I can't do it and probably stay in the video here, but like his hands are so far back, he almost locks that elbow. It's really unusual for hitters to do that and have even the success that he's had. I've just kind of given up and been like, doesn't matter.
Because it hurts your barrel control or it hurts your hit tool, right? Like it's okay for power, but it's bad for hit tool, right?
Yes. You're going to be longer to the ball. So you may obviously generate even more speed as you're getting to the ball, but you are now much longer. And guys who are there, it is, I say a lock. Obviously it's not truly locked, but just try it, right? Try to actually straighten your arm completely and then essentially release to start a normal swing path. You lose time. You are less flexible at that point. You just see very few, not zero, but very few big leaguers who do that and have success. The majority of guys who have that will end up having to change it at some point or they will not have success. That is a case where I'm completely comfortable at this point saying he is an outlier. He's so athletic. His understanding of the strike zone is beyond belief, particularly for a guy coming out of Mississippi high school. To see him do this at low A and then better at high A, which is where I first caught him, and then again at double A. And at that point, you're like, what the heck? What do we have here? Like somebody said, it sounds like you're describing Willie Mays. I'm like, Willie Mays at shortstop.
All right. We got a good comp on him.
That's right. And he's really good. In high school, because for folks who don't know, he was a shortstop center field pitcher. And I mean, he was threw hard enough to like he would have been a prospect as a pitcher. But everyone's like, he's so big. He's going to end up in center field. And I just talked to a pro scout the other day who saw him early in the year too. He was like, center field? This guy's an elite defensive shortstop now, which is basically what I saw. Like you don't see guys his size who move that well. Not just in terms of like pure running speed, because generally when we talk about running speed, sprint speed or any other measurement, it's underway. This is a guy whose first step is so quick, and I saw him moving in both directions, and he's got a cannon of an arm. He looks like he could play shortstop in the big leagues right now, which is, again, sounds like a bonker statement. to make about a guy who at the time that I had seen him was 12 months out of high school, maximum.
Keith doesn't know it yet, but we're going to do a 14-hour pod where we cover all 100 players on the list one at a time. That's actually been the plan all along.
I'll clear my schedule.
I've got a general question. We have this. So there's one, right? And so we've got one, and I feel like one probably is almost a tier of one, where you're like,
I agree.
You like the number one prospect in baseball is like such a thing. And you probably spend an inordinate amount of time debating yourself in your head about who's the number one, or maybe it just at some point is like, bam, that's it, he's number one. Mm-hmm. But I also want to think about sort of how people digest yours and how people use your rankings and how this goes out into the world. And so I have this chart from JJ Cooper, and I call this chart it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved. And the reason I say that is because Cooper, instead of saying bust is anybody under like 5 WAR or whatever, which is a lot of the bust rate work has done, he says a bust is anybody with less than a win in big leagues, right? Mm-hmm. And if you do that, then basically your top 100 never busts. That's what he's looking at with these rankings. Like all the guys in the top 100 will get a cup of coffee and will get a chance in the big leagues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Teams will, because I'm blanking on the actual term for it. But especially if it's a first rounder, which a lot of these guys were first rounders or otherwise very highly paid as draft picks or as international free agents, teams will force that guy to the big leagues just to say that he got there. See, we didn't miss. He got there.
Yeah,
right. Okay. Good job, team. Yeah.
But I mean, like, even if you look at this further, like all the superstars basically were once ranked in the top 100. I mean, there's very, very few superstars. There's very few stars even. It's less than 5% were ever unranked.
Yeah. I think Paul Goldschmidt jumps out at me as I don't think any of us ever had him on 100. He was an 8th round pick out of a mid-major, and the time between when he got good, and I fully admit I was very late on that train, but the time between when he sort of got good and emerged as a prospect and became a big leaguer was fairly short. So you kind of had 1 year to get him on a top 100. I don't think any of us
Soto
did.
wasn't like a number one for anybody.
Nope.
I don't think because he the same thing. He just moved so fast that
he was hurt.
Like,
right, that year before, came back, and then you're correct. Then he moved super fast. It was like, I saw him in A-ball here in Wilmington. He was on the other team at the time, came through, and I was like, he's really, really good. I don't think he's ready. And in a month, he was in the big leagues.
Yeah, right. But so the other part of this, I just wanted to ask, the question that's coming out of this is, so in the top 1 to 3, the star plus superstar percentage is over 50%, right? Okay. Yeah. But in the top 50, like so 50 to 1 to 100, star plus superstar is around 25%. So I know that you're aware of these general trends, and that's like how you build it. But I guess I'm asking what the tiers are. Like you hear people say, oh, there's not that much difference between the 95th ranked guy and the 120th ranked guy or whatever, because down there the differences are smaller. Right. But in your head, I do this also when I'm ranking pitchers. The first sort is almost just throwing guys into, that's a top 30 guy. So
put them in buckets. Same way I do it.
Bucket, yeah. And then, so what are those significant buckets for you? Like where, like in the first sort, like what's what do you like? Possible top 10, possible top 25, possible top 50. Where are the sort of lines that you sort of you draw when you're starting out?
I mean, I could have drafted this question and given it to you. This actually makes me sing to hear that you kind of do it in a similar way, right? Yeah. I started, let me speak specifically to this year, which I think gives you a sense of the general process. But like the list I sent out to front office people and scouts that was 100 that was bore a passing resemblance to the one that eventually ran. But I send it out early because I'm going to tear it apart. I don't care. I'm not tied to this. I want you to tell me too high, too low, get him off, add this guy, etc. 1, 2, 3 were already set. I knew who they were. Griffin was so clearly one. McGonigal was one before Griffin passed him. And as much as I love Jesus Mate, I think McGonigal just has the advantage of he's a full year closer to being ready to the big leagues. They're all awesome, right? Nothing against any of those guys. And then after that, I just put them. Generally, what I start doing is tagging guys, in what I think is the appropriate groups of 10, but of course they don't necessarily add up, right? I might tag 15 guys and put the number 50 on them, and then I actually rank them. It's like, oh, I only had 41 guys in my top 50 so far. Well, that's not how math works. So eventually that's 15, right? But I do start trying to sort them in large buckets of anywhere between like 7 to 15 guys. And that's going to vary not just by year, but by, within like I might have larger groups later in the list and smaller groups towards the top of the list. Like I am fully conscious of the fact that being a top 10, 20, 25 prospect has an outsized meaning. And so I want to be even just a little bit more thoughtful there. Whereas do I really care if somebody's 95 or 96? Those two guys, I even say in the comments, you want to flip those two guys? Go right ahead. I'm not arguing with you. That's just false precision. That is not true. Whereas up towards the top, and a lot of the conversations I had with executives, like the reason Aiden Miller moved up from, I think I originally had him 11 and he ended up at 6, was very specific pairwise comparisons that other people were making in conversations with me about him and the guys I had ahead of him. Because having him versus JJ Weatherholt, two prospects I absolutely love, I think are both going to be stars. Aiden Miller is a shortstop. JJ Weatherholt probably isn't a shortstop. Weatherholt's a little bit closer, feel a little bit better about the hit tool. Miller, better runner, maybe ends up a little bit more power. I think he does end up a little bit more power. Probably should say that stronger than maybe. Like back and forth and back and forth. Where did I ultimately settle? I had Miller higher. The defensive issue, defensive question, position, defensive value ultimately won out. But those pairwise comparisons are way more important at the top of the list. The only place they really come in at the bottom of the list is, again, people get very hung up on the top 100 or just off. Dylan Beavers on the just missed list that ran today.
He's on my list. I was going to ask.
We can talk about him.
By Keith, ranked by BA and not ranked by Keith.
Yes.
They have him pretty high, though.
They have him very high. And I mean, I disagree with them. Professional disagreements. JJ's great, right? This is all professional. They had guys on their list where I'm not going to say because I do not want to be in a position of criticizing anybody's list. But they had a couple guys on their list where I was like, really? I'm sure they looked at mine and said the same thing, right? That's absolutely the truth. We just don't do that in putt. They might say that to me, putt. Like I'll see JJ at some point this spring and he'll be like, yeah, this guy. I'm like, yeah, here's why. What about this guy, right? We'll have those conversations because we're friends. But like Beavers, I have nothing against Dylan Beavers. I think he's a good big leaguer right now. I didn't see a lot of ceiling. I've seen him a lot going all the way back to his pro debut in Delmarva a lot of years ago. He was the holiday draft. So however many years.
Power, you think he's like more like a 20 homer power? Like he's not like a big
swing
power guy.
As currently constituted is not going to get to 20 plus homers a year. And he's a corner outfielder. It's going to be some swing and miss. I like the approach. He hits it hard. And I think with the right swing changes, maybe he could get there. If he were 21 in doing this, I'd feel a bit differently. Just at that age, you're more likely to see and take two swing change. Teams are more likely to try that stuff. Are the Orioles really going to try to do a lot with his swing now, given his age, proximity to the big leagues? I mean, I would not take what they can get. Just take what you can get. He is what he is. I brought this up with Max Anderson. It was like, somebody should have made this guy a catcher. But he's 24 and on the cusp of the big leagues. No one's doing that, including him. I'm sure he's going to say, no, I'm about to get to the big leagues. Don't hold me back by 2-3 years. Even though, God, if you see Max Anderson on the field, you're like, that's a catcher. Why is he at second base? Really, it just looks like a catcher.
Yeah, he's a solid guy. Like it doesn't quite look like another infielder to me. The Tigers are in a fascinating spot right now. You got McGonigal up at 2. You got Max Clark at 5. You got guys up and down the list in this organization. A lot of them are close to big league ready, which is a great problem for this organization to have. And you have to kind of pair that with where their timeline is with Tarek Skubal hitting free agency. I mean, this time next winter, Tarek Skubal might be getting a bag from the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, someone else, right?
I didn't know anybody else spend money. I'm told it's only the Dodgers. They're ruining baseball.
Yeah. There will be bidders and there will be lots of money out there eventually post-lockout, of course. All that is to say, like, how do you think the Tigers make these pieces fit? And of these prospects that are knocking on the door, who do you think is actually most ready to come up and contribute right away? Because this season absolutely matters to them in a big way.
I would bet you all 3 of those guys that we just mentioned, Anderson, McGonigal, and Clark, debut this season. Anderson's the closest. Obviously, he's been in AAA. He's done a little bit in AAA. I do think if you just brought him up tomorrow, he might not do much other than make contact, but he would make contact. McGonigal offers a lot more impact. he's missed time with injuries the last 2 years. He's another guy kind of in that Griffin camp. Like, why rush him? What is the advantage to rushing him? Also, they've still got McGonigal at shortstop, and he hasn't really played himself off of it. I still think ultimately he is going to get moved to another position, but you'd probably want to resolve that before you get to the majors. All three of those guys get there at some point.
What's the issue at short? Is it's arm strength, or
his arm is a little bit light for that side of the infield? He kind of makes it work. I mean, that was always supposed to be one of the knocks on Bregman too, and he still hasn't moved to the right side of the infield. I guess it'll happen eventually.
I mean, Swanson has a noodle arm, and
some guys do, right? That came up with Dax Kilby, the Yankees prospect who's on my just missed list today, where the pro guys who saw him, the only negative they really had was they were like, don't know if the arm's really going to play there. He might have to go to center, but it doesn't matter. We think he can really hit, etc. McGonigal is an extremely instinctive player. He's very smart. I don't love the phrase, he's got a high baseball IQ that can get misapplied in a lot of cases. But I've seen enough of him. This guy really, really knows what he's doing. Good game clock, good field awareness. That is making up for the fact that he's not particularly fast or agile at the position. I think if you moved him over to second base, he'd be really good because all of those things would translate, and you just aren't involved in quite as many plays. You are not expecting.
But they need a shortstop.
They really need a shortstop. Well, and I'm glad you said that because, okay, maybe a year or two behind him is Bryce Rainier, who, assuming he comes back fine from surgery,
who you like a lot too.
I mean, he would be in the top 10 if he played a whole year and kept doing this. Like they would have had 3 guys in the top 10, which Rainier checked every single box that he got hurt. So we got to make sure he comes back okay. And then he did miss a fair bit of playing time, so he still hasn't actually gotten out of low A. But he could be McGonigal a year from now. And another guy I just talked to, plenty of guys see Rainier before he got hurt, fortunately. And I think a lot of other teams were thinking they may be looking to make trades at the deadline. What if Rainier becomes available? And of course he was hurt. He wasn't actually going to be available. Turned out he wasn't available in trades, or wasn't usable in trades at that point. But I talked to plenty of guys who saw him early, and it was just raves across the board. Hit, power, plus defense, plus arm, great feel for the game. I had some questions as an amateur. It's like, I don't know if the bat speed is great. He's definitely got power. And he showed the power. I mean, the limited data we have all kind of back that up. And he hit velocity too. It was like, okay, well, if he can do that, he might be a star. The only thing keeping him from the top 10 was the injury and the need to see him come back from it, make sure he's still throwing okay.
If they decide that Parker Meadows is not the answer in center, which one of these guys could play center for them this year?
Clark can play center. I don't think he's quite as rangy as Parker Meadows is. I think Meadows can be really good. Like Parker Meadows should be a Rocky. Like he would be so valuable in that park. And some of the little breaking ball recognition stuff, obviously Denver smooths those things over a bit. That would be a perfect marriage there. And you put Clark in center, and maybe you lose a little bit on defense, but you gain a lot on offense. And on the bases too. Clark is he's fast and he is a very, very good base runner. So I think that it's essentially when they decide they have the need, and maybe Clark, he's been with McGonigal, but a little slower to adjust at each level, give him a bit of a taste in AAA, let him go around a little bit, make some adjustments, let the pitchers force him to make adjustments, and then call him up. So by the second half, I think he's probably their center fielder.
Nice to have reinforcements like that as a contending team, right? I mean, it's a sign of good organizational health.
They have drafted and developed super well the last 3-4 years. Like what a 180 from where they were previously.
I was thinking a lot about the Mariners, too, in a similar light, because they've got Colt Emerson inside your top 5. They got a couple of pitchers inside your top 30 with Ryan Sloan, who I think was unranked this time last year. Cade Anderson just got drafted. He's up at 28. But they've got more position players in the bottom half of the list also. I mean, they've got a little bit of everything. I think they've got enough to keep trading, but they've also got enough to fill a couple of glaring needs on the big league roster sooner rather than later.
Yes. And they are one of the more aggressive teams in trading, too. They're willing to make a lot of deals. They traded more from kind of the second tier of their prospects over the last year. I mean, they traded Harry Ford had slipped a lot. He was obviously not on my top 100. He's almost certainly not a catcher at this point. It's been enough time behind the plate, and there's just such a consensus now. I think even the Mariners had kind of come around to he's probably not going to be a catcher. He's certainly not going to dislodge the catcher that they have right now also. So that made it particularly easy to move on from him. But they have a guy like Michael Arroyo who can really hit. And I mean, he should probably be their second baseman at some point in the next 12 to 18 months. But also, I think a lot of other clubs would gladly take him. And the Mariners have the depth that they could potentially trade him. Or maybe that allows them to trade Cole Young, which I actually think I predicted they would do at the deadline last year. They didn't. Maybe they trade him to another club, a non-contending club that sees Cole Young and says, well, he's our everyday second baseman right now for no money, and we have 6 years of team control left. Like, that obviously has a lot of value to teams. And Young was very good pretty much up through AAA.
But ceiling-wise, you take Emerson, you take Arroyo over Young. Yeah,
absolutely. And Emerson, he's in the top 10 because I think the ceiling is so high. It's a shortstop who hits for power and adds value on defense. Like, there's not that many of those guys who are also doing it as young as he's doing it. And he has, when he's been healthy, he's been banged up a little bit. That's probably the only knock, but he has performed at a very young age everywhere he's played so far. And that's what puts him at the top. I also wonder if they would trade Felny and Celestin, who a year ago was in my top 30 or so, because he had looked so good in the complex and it was on both sides of the ball and he's a switch hitter and everything kind of backed up this year. And I had just one of the few guys I mentioned, scouts were questioning, like, he's not playing as hard. Is it a nagging injury, or does he not maybe have the same effort level or work ethic that we thought a year ago? And is that a buy low opportunity for someone else where the Mariners could also say, we have plenty of middle infielders. We can afford to trade from this depth to go get whatever it is they decide they need. We'll see what it is they ultimately decide they need either in the spring or maybe as they get closer to the deadline. There'll be something, and I believe they're highly, highly motivated to try to get back to the World Series, get to the World Series, get back to the playoffs.
I know we've got a decent number of Brewers fans listening to this show who are saying, let's talk about Jesús Mate. And I read the write-up this year, and it felt like a nice warm bowl of soup for me. Like, it's been frigid here. And I think the thing that really kind of jumped off the page to me is that the defense now looks like it's going to be above average at short in the big leagues. That wasn't really something we were expecting from Jesús Mate this time last year. I think you hinted earlier, he's still probably a year away, but has those kind of loud tools where if he just goes on a tear for 4 months, is there a world in which he's a August promotion, kind of in the Corbin Carroll, Gunnar Henderson mold? Is that the type of ceiling he actually has?
I'm really trying to imagine the scenario where they do that, because I don't think the Brewers are a team that particularly rushes prospects. I'm not saying they would necessarily be rushing him. He is just so young. And they have other guys who could potentially fill the middle infield in the interim. I mean, he would kind of have to storm his way to the big leagues with such outlier production at AA and AAA, I think, to make that happen. But also, I have him as the third best prospect in baseball, and I think he's going to be a superstar. And he's got crazy good actions at shortstop, and he's got bat speed. And I actually saw him 3 times in spring training, and he did not look good at all. I was like, whoa, we got to slow down. Like, they didn't think it affected his long-term outlook. But I'm like, this guy may need to like stick in the complex for a bit, because he was only in the DSL the year before. And it was like, maybe he needs to start out in the ACL and then go to low A. And then he went to low A, and he was on that Carolina club that hit like 400 as a team in April. And he kind of slowed down a little, but not enough to, like, he had a great year across the board. Maybe he's one of those guys like in the Konnor Griffin mold where it doesn't matter. You'll keep moving him up and he'll make quick adjustments. And he's so athletically gifted that he doesn't stop hitting until he gets to AAA or until he gets to the majors. So I just wouldn't rule it out. Just feel like he's so young and they have such a good system with so much depth. A couple of things would have to fall in place for them to need to consider promoting him at that point. So it's not really a knock on his ability, but more on the situation as a whole. And I think it's just a comment on his youth.
I mean, he could sign an extension.
Yes, right?
The Churio.
Yes. He's Churio at shortstop, right? Like, it's not the worst comp, actually. People are asking, is he better or worse than Churio? I'm like,
but where does he start, you think? Where does he start, and where does he and what is it that, because his demonstrated power is probably behind his power grades, his, the future, there's present future action there between your, like, so what is it that he needs to do to get to that power? Does it just fill out?
Yeah, I mean, he's
18.
He's 18. Is he still 18? Yeah, he's still actually 18 until May. Jesus. I mean, but longtime readers of mine know this. Like, when first time I saw Ethan Salas, he was the first prospect I had ever scouted who was younger than my actual daughter. And I was like, I officially like crossed the Rubicon here. There's no coming back. Right. I'm just done. Like, get my cane. And, I have no chance now. And I all of a sudden I'm starting entire paragraphs with "back in my day."
Well, the Brewers are on my mind all the time, but I was thinking about the Freddie Peralta trade and thinking about just the trades we've seen overall this winter, where it's been more quantity over quality for the most part. Like generally larger packages, guys that were more recently drafted. I think that Freddie Peralta trade was a little more of an exception because Jet Williams has had some injury trouble, but he's near big league ready. And then Brandon Sproat was in the big leagues for a little while last year. So we've seen a couple of different approaches. And the thing about Williams that most people know already, he's small. He's 5'7", and the Brewers don't seem to shy away from that at all. Fun-sized, yeah. So I guess the question I have for you is just the broader trends of what teams are seeking out via trade. Like, is this just the way the trade market works now, where you have to find previous, air quotes, flawed players and try to get them when the market is just lighter on them than they should be, or try to get ahead of professional looks being extended professional looks? If you trade for guys that were drafted 6 months ago who barely played if they were drafted, there hasn't been a lot of time for everyone to scout them at the professional ranks and to gather the data they want to use before having more confidence to acquire them.
I do want to just finish answering Eno's question real quick. And before I get to that, you were sort of asking what else Jesus might have to show. Like, I love the kid, obviously, but I do think, whether it's AA or AAA, somewhere in here, there's going to be some adjustments to the approach. Like, he's drawn walks so far. He's shown like really good contact rates for an 18-year-old. He can be a little over aggressive. And at some point, that's going to catch up to him. He played 5 games in AA at the end of last year. Maybe that's what was going on. Also, it's the end of a super long year, so I'm not reading into a tiny sample. But even I saw him 4 or 5 times over the course of last year, and I don't have a criticism of him, but I think at some point he's going to have to find a little bit more balance where it's just make some better decisions. Maybe it's working the count more a little bit early to get to the pitch he can really drive, and then some of that power will show up in games. To the question, Derek, that you were asking, trading is weird right now. Like, I really do find like the Freddie Peralta trade was almost refreshing. It's like, God, 2 top 100 prospects just got traded for a big leaguer for a year. We don't see a lot of trades like that anymore. And it made it very easy to write up. Also, I'd already written my capsules on both of those players for the top 100. Awesome. But you see more trades like, I think of the Shane Baz deal, which I loved for both sides. I thought the Rays got a lot of quantity with some upside, but I think Shane Baz needed to go to another organization. I think the Orioles, particularly the way they work with pitchers, they're going to get more out of him. I would be very surprised if Baz doesn't take a bit of a leap this year. Also, hopefully he'll just have a full healthy season. But look who got traded. 2 guys who just got drafted, one of whom, I don't even know, did DeBrun play at all? He might have played 5 minutes in the minors. It was, those guys are getting traded a lot now because they don't play very much after the draft, if at all. Pitchers basically never pitch after the draft. And so teams haven't.
Yeah, he didn't play.
He didn't play, right? Yeah, another fun-sized guy. So I think teams are, I think emotionally, they're not as wedded to those guys. They haven't fallen in love with them yet. They haven't gone out and watched them in the box scores every night and decided that's our next superstar. And also they're essentially everything's going off the pre-draft reports. What did you have on the guy in the draft? We really liked him in the draft. All right, we'll acquire him. Well, okay. It's not that different from how the Padres.
No new information.
There's no new information on most of these guys.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change anything. Like, I was writing something on the Padres earlier today, working on their team report, and Cruz Schoolcraft. Like, the thought on him right now is going to be exactly what it was in June. That was their first round pick, high school pitcher who didn't throw anywhere. I think he might have thrown a little bit in like instructs, but that's it. He didn't pitch in any games anywhere. So we have nothing new on those guys. So those guys are a lot easier to trade. And you also see a lot of guys traded from much lower in farm systems. A lot of teams, some teams have cut pro scouting entirely, which is a conversation for another day, but I think is just bonkers. A lot of teams have gone to a more hybrid approach where they're doing much less scouting at the upper levels in the minors, but they are still scouting pretty heavily A-ball, the complex, even down to the DSL. I understand that approach a lot more. There's so much more video and data available.
Because it's hard to get the player that's good, that's in AA or AAA, because they're also on the cusp, right?
Yep, exactly. Because that team, the team that already has that guy might say, well, wait, we have made plans for this year where that guy is potentially coming up and helping us. And there's more certainty, right? You know, the predictability of those guys based on their performance at higher levels like that, there is a little bit more probability. I don't want to say certainty, but you have a greater degree of confidence that that is going to carry over. And so we see guys like, there have been a couple trades already this winter where somebody got traded out of the DSL. And I'm like, I don't know, right? That's another world at this point, because it's basically the data from down there is really spotty, and the caliber of competition is extremely uneven. A lot of
quality of umpiring, I've heard, is just.
I've heard it's terrible. Yeah, it's inconsistent. How about let's say it's inconsistent?
Okay.
Rather than be kind about it. Look at that. Because of the roster limits in the CBA, a lot of teams now operate 2 teams out of the DSL. Well, think of how watered down the level of competition is there. Obviously, we don't have a Venezuelan summer league anymore, so that's where some of that comes from. But you're just going off scouting reports, and often scouting reports from maybe before some of those guys signed, or scouting reports from one look at a guy, and you have a little bit of data and you're like, sure, we'll take that versus the guy in A-ball who we have information on and we just don't like him.
I had a sort of general question about pitchers. So you in the preamble, the intro, you do talk about how the state of pitching in the major leagues has led you to some changes in the way you rank pitchers. I think you reference injury, and I understand why you have fewer pitchers. Their bust rate's got to be higher. Their bust rates always have been higher when you look at past prospect rankings. And then, if you add injury on top of the risk that they're not as good, like that's two risks, as opposed to like a position player pretty much has a one risk. Will he play or not? Like, is he good or not? Pitchers, there's like, is he good or not? And is he healthy or not? What I'm wondering about is like, when you sort of consistently a little bit lower than I think the rest of the industry, even when it comes to even some of the stud pitchers like Jonah Tong, Peyton Tolley, and there's some pitchers where you're higher on, but like I would say generally, even the pitchers that are in there, Trey Savage, is top 10 for another outlet and more 25 for you. When you're doing that, is that just like a sort of an injury thing? Tell me, just let me in a little bit more on this, on your decision making when it comes to ranking a stud pitcher who's healthy now and close to the big leagues, and why you might have them lower than somebody else just because they're a pitcher, or if I have that wrong.
No, you don't have it wrong. And I would also add to that the factor of they don't pitch as much, right? So their top end value, unless you're, Paul Skeens or Tariq Skubal, your top end value isn't as high as it used to be, right? Versus a position player, right? It's easier to foresee a position player getting to 5 WAR consistently than it is to see a pitcher getting to 5 WAR consistently. Like, look at Mackenzie Gore, who's been pretty good the last couple of years. And it's like 3-ish WAR each year. And that's a guy who made every start, but he doesn't pitch. He's also not very efficient, but he doesn't pitch super deep into games. And so as a result, their upside value isn't quite the same. And so that is why in general, I think I have pitchers a lot lower. And I do think also the challenge of a lot of pitchers, and we see pitchers change. I know this is preaching to the choir on this one, where it's like pitchers change a lot, right? Pitch design is such a thing now, even as after guys have reached the big leagues too, where it's like Trey Savage. I always say it wrong. I like Savage better. I think he should go with that.
How am I supposed to say it? Oh no, I've been saying it wrong. It's Yesevich.
I think it's Yesevich, isn't it?
I think everyone's been saying it wrong. I feel like the broadcast was saying Savage.
I think that's how the Blue Jays people say it, but Savage, man. That's like
sounds better.
Macho Man Trey Savage. Absolutely.
Let's just call it a nickname.
Yes. Where like it's look, you don't see a lot of those, and Tong has another one. You don't see a lot of those very high slot guys, or at least historically we haven't. He does not have a great breaking ball. Both those guys are super north-south in their approaches. How is that going to play facing major league hitters multiple times? Like Tong's a little better athlete. I think he can make better adjustments, but Trey is I'm just calling him Trey. He's there, right? He is there right now and has already had some success in the big leagues, whereas Tong, I think, showed he might be a little bit further behind developmentally. Not in a bad way, just time-wise. I do think there's value to that. I do like both of those guys. Obviously, I have them ranked highly relative to the rest of the pitchers in the universe, but there's still a lot of work to do. And when you're asking me to compare a pitcher where I'm like, that third pitch is still kind of a big question mark, to a hitter where it's more of, no, we don't really need mechanical changes. You might need to just tighten up the swing decisions a little bit, right? I'm going to default to the guy who needs less improvement. The improvements are more
and also
marginal.
Has a higher ceiling probably in terms
and has
of,
a higher ceiling.
Exactly. And production on the field and stuff.
Like, I actually went through the list at the end and made sure that I didn't just crush pitchers entirely. Right. I wanted to make sure, no, I got to have some pitchers somewhere up there. I looked at it at the end. I'm like, I don't have a pitcher in the top 10. How do I feel about that? And at the end, I settled in. I was okay because there was also nobody there was no perfect pitching. Right. Like Bubba Chandler is the closest. Somebody pointed out the Pirates have the top hitting prospect and the top pitching prospect on my list. And they said, has that ever happened before? And I said, I don't think so. I have to check. That is on my to-do list. But that would be pretty awesome. I mean, Chandler is a really great pitching prospect. And even he has questions at this point.
Because his changeup is ahead of his breaking balls, right? Like
very much so. Yeah. I don't know how they grade out for you, but it's always been true for me.
Yeah. A righty that's changeup forward, I'm always like, how are you getting righties out?
What's weird about him, I don't know how much you've delved into his arsenal. Like, he can spin it. He absolutely. This is not one of those guys who can't spin
his breaking balls.
Doesn't like his breaking
balls, and
they blend to me. They blend way too much, and I have said for a long time, like publicly, like, pick one. Probably a slider. Your arm's super fast. You can spin it, but I don't even care. Pick one and make that your primary breaking ball. You can always try to reintroduce the other one later, but to the point
just
where
have a better feel for it.
If they're blending, maybe that's causing a problem. It doesn't have to be like an overt problem. It's just literally as he's trying to release the ball, if he's in between grips or in between releases, is that causing the issue? Try it. I've seen both of them could be good. And of course I see the spin rates. I'm like, well, you can do the hardest thing, right? So many of these fastball changeup guys, like you're talking about, the problem is they just can't spin the ball. I don't think Jesús, whatever, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't think he spins the ball particularly well. He's just got that, because of that slot, he's got that high riding kind of top rail four seamer.
Oh, he's got a really weird breaking ball. He has the reverse breaking ball.
He does.
His arm side movement,
it looks like a screwball.
Yeah, I don't know.
I remember seeing him in college and standing next to a scouting director and being like, is that his breaking ball? Because you could see, right? You can see.
Is that a one seam? Is that a one seam sinker?
What is that? And I remember him nodding. He goes, yeah. Because obviously he'd seen him one time before and he had gone through the same mental calculus, right? Like, it doesn't work because it looks like the splitter, right? You think it's.
But it's not. I mean, it has distinct movement from the splitter, so it may work. He may create his own little universe where it works. And
you ask any hitter, right? Guys coming up there, they hate him. They hate anything like that, and that's Tom. And there's at least one other I'm just drawing a blank right now, but at least one other pretty highly touted pitching prospect who comes from like top shelf up there. I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's a new thing now. We love the guys who are low because they got the low angle of attack. And they can get the low release height.
That's weird because the major league trend is actually lower.
Right?
The median,
you wrote that. I knew that from you, actually.
The median arm angle has dropped about a degree every year since we've tracked it. So, and there's been some research that it's healthier. So I just wonder, maybe those are established guys, wanting to, lengthen their careers as opposed to, young guys wanting to make it. There's still guys who are way over the top who, are getting success for it. But when you're talking about like pitchers changing, Logan Gilbert comes to mind because he was drafted on a curveball he doesn't throw anymore.
Yes.
And he was taught a sweeper he doesn't throw anymore, and he never had a good changeup, and now he's a fastball splitter guy. The only thing that he was drafted for that he still has is that huge extension, probably.
Yes. Yep. Because I remember seeing him. It was one of the coldest days I've ever had. It were at NJIT Powerhouse, because that was their conference, actually, at the time, at least. Who knows if that's still true. And he'd had mono that spring, so he was like 89, 92. But the year before, he'd been 92, 95. I'm like, he'll probably get back there. He's a command guy with enough fastball, and he's got a really good curveball. Sure, that's a first rounder. Of course, he didn't think, right? He's a completely different guy right now. In one great way.
fastball splitter guy, dude.
Splitter,
High velo and
Just the one big thing is, I still remember going up the side and seeing he finished before we could measure extension like that. It's like you could just see it. He was so far out over his front side. You're like, yep, that's great. That counts. And I liked him at 89, 92, but of course the pitcher I liked is not exactly the Logan Gilbert that we see in the majors today.
But I also think of like Greinke, right? Like Greinke was drafted on fastball, slider, and probably velo. And he had this long career because he added pitches. He added the Felix changeup. He had, he tinkered. So I wonder if, in the age of stuff, if there's a possibility we're underrating when we scout, we're underrating command a little bit, because you just said Logan Gilbert was drafted. Like when you saw him, you said command, enough velo, good curveball.
Yeah, he really located the fastball.
And what does that mean? Adjustability. It means that like when he does learn a new pitch, it's more likely he can put it in the zone. I mean, there's other guys that are high stuff that can learn a new pitch, and if they can't put it in the zone, then how can you use it? So
it's funny you mentioned Greinke too, because the Royals have two prospects who were in low A last year who are among the best command guys in the minors. Kendry Churio, who was on my 100, he might be 18 now. I mean, that is such outlier command and control. I mean, I had scouts telling me if that's not 80 command on a prospect, I don't know what that would be, right? That you would never put that grade on a prospect. And David Shields, who they drafted in 24 out of Pennsylvania, he was a quarterback pitcher, does not throw hard enough yet, but he's projectable, he's athletic, and he has really good command. And both guys have really good, repeatable deliveries. Churio, you're just hoping he holds up and gets a little more physical, but you don't need him to throw harder. Shields is more like the classic right-handed high school projection guy. If the velocity comes, he's going to be really good. I love those guys, and I do think the Royals a little bit are kind of zagging as everyone zigs. Everyone's chasing stuff. And I like stuff too. You see my write-ups for the draft, right? I'm obviously talking about what pitches a guy has and are they going to work, et cetera. I love command guys too. And if other teams are eschewing the command guys because they don't have the present stuff, but you see guys you think either will grow into it or your development guys can help them develop stuff or gain stuff by changing pitches like you described with Gilbert, great. That would seem like an opportunity to me.
I wonder if major league scouts are like trying to figure out if they've done weighted balls yet, If is this pre-weighted balls, then nice. We can add a couple.
We can add. Oh yeah. Well, to me, that's the thing in the draft. That's a thing an area scout should be doing too. It's like if you're interested in a player in your area, it's like what kind of training have you done? Have you gone any of those?
Where have you trained? Have you already gone to Driveline?
Yep, exactly. It's check or maybe nothing against Driveline, but it would be like, no, he's already done the velocity gain. We're not nothing to see here. Right. Nothing to see here.
Can't mentally add another 2 ticks on this one.
Right.
Yeah, already a little bit maxed out in that regard.
Before
we let you go,
go ahead.
One kind of bigger question. We've talked about some of the high-end guys in the list, how the list comes together, a lot of different things. But I'm curious, in terms of proximity, 2026 impact. A lot of our listeners are fantasy players, of course. They're looking for guys that are going to come up and have meaningful roles for most, maybe even all of this season. Not necessarily guys at the top of the list, but guys kind of scattered around it. Who do you see as having the best paths and floors to come up and make an impact right away here in 2026?
So Carter Jensen, I'm going top down on my list. I just pulled up my list to actually be able to cite it. I had him 10th. He's going to catch a lot for the Royals this year. I think he's going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. I think he should be. I'll mention Dylan Beavers just because we already talked about him. I think he's very much a Rookie of the Year candidate. Like people brought up, you didn't have Colton Cowser on your list. He was second in the Rookie of the Year ranking. If you go back that year, I said before the season, he's a dark horse candidate to win Rookie of the Year because he had a job. That was the biggest, number one thing I look for in trying to predict a Rookie of the Year.
We talked about that a lot here in Rates and Barrel.
Right. It's playing time is such a huge variable. Do you have a job out of spring training or a clear path to a job? Like Nolan McLean would be another one I would mention where it's like he's in the rotation. Obviously, he's going to be in the rotation. So he's definitely a guy who has a very good chance to have positive major league value this year. Sal Stewart should be on their opening day roster, certainly. And I mean, there's a couple of those college pitchers from last year, like Cade Anderson and Liam Doyle. I don't know that teams are necessarily planning to race them through the minors, but it wouldn't surprise me. College starters getting there in a year. That's pretty common at this point. I mean, God, Tyler Bremner is an angel. Of course he's going to be in the majors at some point this year.
A little bit lower. You've got you're a little different than consensus on Braden Montgomery and George Lombard. You're a little bit higher than some other spots. They seem somewhat close, or are they? What do you think about them?
Lombard, I think I may have even written this in the capsule. Like Lombard, I saw him in high A right before he got promoted, and I didn't like the promotion at the time. I think I wrote they should not be promoting him to Double A, and they did it like a week or two later. And he went to Double A, and his surface level stats were not good. Sort of under the hood, it was a lot better. He runs a lot of deep counts. He really works the at bat, and he just was not. Then he wasn't capitalizing in a lot of those situations.
Called strikes threes.
Yeah, or finally, like he gets 7 pitches into an at bat, and then the pitcher makes his pitch, and he doesn't. Right, he missed an opportunity early. Like he's young, he barely played in high A, and to me, if he had just spent the whole year in high A or most of it in high A, everyone is probably looking at this guy differently. And to me, both of those guys you mentioned are really, really good athletes who, in Lombard's case, I think the early promotion probably colored our opinions of him. In Montgomery's case, he had a pretty serious ankle injury the year before and took a while to come back and then missed a little time here and there over the course of the year. He was always going to have some approach concerns that were going to come up. I think he got to Double A, and then it was pretty evident he did have approach concerns. But I will bet on guys who are that athletic and still young. In Braden's case, probably more in baseball young. Lombard, just actually young. I will bet on guys like that to be able to continue to make adjustments. And it does help when I remember talking to the White Sox multiple times about Montgomery in the last couple of months too, and what the plan is for him and what they see as strengths and weaknesses. It's like, okay, this lines up with what I see. These are the things I think he'll need to be able to work on. And I do continue to see pretty high upside for both of those guys. Like, I don't know if Lombard will be up this year. Maybe he goes back to Double A, rakes, and gets a quick promotion to Triple A, and that puts him on the cusp of the big leagues. I do think by 2027, he is at least in position to be their opening day shortstop.
Montgomery seems a lot closer. I mean, they have a need in the outfield. I think if he probably starts at Double A, if he rakes for a month, he might be up, right?
Yes, I think they are probably inclined. They have incentive to move him quickly. I mean, they have needs almost everywhere other than behind the plate. So I could absolutely see them wanting to move him quickly. Another one where I'm fine giving him a couple of months. I would probably start him in Double A actually and say, you know what, you had a great year. We moved you up twice. And then he actually played well in the fall league after I left. Sorry. I'm fine with starting that guy back at Double A for a month or so. It's like, dude, hit your way to Triple A. We are happy to promote you. There's very little reason not to return a guy to a place where he didn't spend much time the previous year and didn't have a lot of success. And I would be completely fine with them saying that. And you know what? You rake May 1st. You're in Charlotte. You're in Triple A, and then we're just ready to call you up whenever we have an opening in the outfield. That seems like a pretty good outcome for them.
Yeah, I think I saw 5 White Sox in your top 100. Montgomery being the highest at 30, Caleb Bonham at 44, a couple of pitchers, Hagen Smith at 58, Noah Schultz at 95, and then Billy Carlson was their first rounder last year, I believe.
Yeah, another guy with one of those, like he's got that arm bar too. Oh. He is a wizard at shortstop, though. He's really right. There's some really him and Josué Gonzalez, 2 best defensive shortstops on the list, teenagers too. And then you watch them both play. I haven't seen Josué. This is from other scouts. I've seen Carlson. And I remember seeing him this spring. What the hell? Like, you just don't see teenagers make plays like that. With those two and the Marlins, Starlin Cava, not on the 100, but I saw him in fall league. I saw some really good shortstop defense this year. It was really, and it's just very exciting. It reminds me of when it was like Jose Iglesias and Edeni Echeverria. We had a group of those mostly Cuban shortstops all come up at the same time, and they were all wizards defensively.
Yeah, fun times in the fall league when those guys were taking infield together. I think this was before the Fall Stars game. I don't know, a dozen or so years ago now. It's probably, probably about that long.
I remember when.
The other question, though, with the White Sox is like, it kind of looks like this rebuild is going at least reasonably well. I mean, how optimistic and excited should White Sox fans be based on the pieces they've put together so far?
I like the top of their system. They are still lacking in depth. I think the last 2 drafts or so look really good, particularly the top couple of picks. They've also promoted some guys too, so that does hurt in terms of the farm system, right? when you have like Teal and Caro are in the big leagues already, that they don't count for the farm system, but those are still obviously wins. Both of those they're good players. And, Colson Montgomery, they had to rebuild his swing last spring, but he's something now, and he wasn't a year ago. So there's help at the big league level. I do wish I saw more depth in their minors. I'd say particularly pitching depth. The pitching they have towards the top of the system is good. You can never have enough. And they're one of those systems where you love the top 8 or 9 guys, and then suddenly it falls off very sharply. And that is, they're still dealing with what Chris Getz and company inherited, essentially, a system that had been really kind of strip mined by ill-advised trades to help the big league level and some not so great drafts. And I mean, there's lots of them. You guys have probably heard some of these stories about, Kenny Williams, et cetera, coming in and saying, you got to draft this guy and not draft that guy. And it's going to take years to fully restock the system. So they're trending up, but they've got work to do.
There's some role of player development too. I mean, I've just heard that they're, they were at some point the worst player development, or they were the Angels. So like, if you're talking about depth, I think a lot of times the role of player development is to move guys a half grade. And then you'd be like, oh yeah, I like their depth a little bit better because they took these late draft picks and they moved that half grade, and now they've got decent depth.
Agreed.
Do you hear anything about that improving? I mean, we just know that they've done some hires and they talk about it, but it's really hard, I think, sometimes to get a sense of where a team's player development is going. Right? It takes time.
So I think of the White Sox, the Cardinals, and now the Rockies, who are going to be doing this. The Rockies actually opened their pitching lab a year ago, but now they've got a new front office.
They have a pitching lab finally. Nice. They probably have Stuff Plus finally. They were the last team to not have a Stuff Plus.
Yes. I mean, they have an analytics department. It's really small, I think, but it's bigger. But I bring up the Cardinals because they brought in Rob Cerfolio from the Guardians, who brought one of his people from Cleveland and brought in some hitting people from elsewhere too, and rebuilt the staff. And you saw immediate results. Multiple players. Joshua Baez went from like he might swing himself out of baseball to he looks like a future regular. Tekoa Roby, before he blew out, huge improvement across the board. Stuff was better. Strike throwing was better. Delivery was much more on time. And of course, Tommy John. He'd been battling injuries for years, so it wasn't shocking. Just the timing kind of stunk. They had a bunch of guys in their system take immediate steps forward. Whereas the White Sox also hired some really great people. Some people I know, some people I just know by reputation. They haven't had as many of those successes right now. And that is the thing I would say if I were trying to be a sort of White Sox fan or critic here, to say what's going on. So where are the big player development wins? They have done, I would say Colson Montgomery is one because they rebuilt to swing to the plate.
But that might have been at the major league level almost. I mean, was that
they sent him to the complex. They actually sent him back from AAA. He started at AAA.
That's also like a high value guy that you spend all your resources on. That's like where you send the director of hitting and he goes and hits with him. That's not the same as like, the third reliever on the high A team.
Take your 12th rounder, right?
Yeah.
And turn him into a big leaguer. That is what I don't think they have had many of those guys, where that'll be, I think, a kind of a bigger test going forward. So like Christian Oppor, OPPOR, lefty in their system. He was a 5th rounder in 2023 out of a JUCO. He has emerged as one of their best, maybe their best non-top 100 pitching prospect. That's a guy who might turn out to be a player development win because he came in as a pretty raw athlete with a good arm. And even now, 2 years in, it's like, oh, he's a pitcher. We'll see what he is. Yeah. We'll see if he ends up staying a starter. They need a bunch of guys like that. That's just one who came to mind right away. It's like player development has made this guy better. They need to start stacking those up.
I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for some wins.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that was missing for a long time in that organization. It was like, who did they draft? Who did they make better and get to the big leagues? And it was not the way that organization functioned. So if they can do that, I think that'll be that next big sign that things are truly headed in the right direction on the south side of Chicago. Keith, we appreciate your time and your insight. We're going to let you get back to those organizational rankings and write-ups since you got a few of those to work on still. But let our listeners know where they can find you.
So obviously all my stuff shows up on The Athletic. The top 100 went up Monday. The just missed guys, another dozen capsules went up today, Wednesday. The farm system rankings go up Thursday, and then Monday we'll start with the team reports, one division per day. You can also find me on Blue Sky at keithlaw.bsky.social. That is the place where I actually answer people and respond. I still have an account on The Bad Place, but it's just for posting links. So if you actually want to get my links and then maybe also ask a question or just see what I'm saying to other people, I'm in the comments on The Athletic, and I'm also on Blue Sky.
Yeah, you're great about responding to the comments too. So that's always nice for subscribers that drop those questions and bits of feedback in there as well. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. You can join the conversation in our Discord. If you made this episode all the way to the end, hit the like button on this video on YouTube. We'd really appreciate that. We are back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.